So by the time you're seeing this video, the Decisive Strike change will have been out for, I don't know, about a week or so, give or take. I never really know what day these videos are going to get uploaded when I record them. They just kind of get recorded in batches and then edited in batches and then scheduled for upload in batches, and then you get the point. The point is that Decisive Strike is getting a permanent permanent buff to 5-second stun. And this is a problem for a multitude of reasons. I think we could talk about some of the ones that are kind of unrelated to this video for a second. One of the big problems with the DS changes is definitely things like, people are like, oh, well, it's not going to be a problem if you don't tunnel. You do know that people use Decisive Strike, like, aggressively. Like, I've come to learn that if I unhook someone, if someone gets unhooked and then they run across the map to come find me, my very first thought is to leave them on the ground and slug them. Most of the time it is. Sometimes I'm not paying attention. I'm like, what are you doing? And then I pick them up, I get DS, and I'm like, oh, that's what they're doing. Because people use Decisive Strike aggressively. Because, believe it or not, there's a lot of time wasted with Decisive Strike. They run up, they hop in a locker, so you got to take the time to go through the animation, then they stun you, so you got to take the time to come out of the animation, then you either have to chase them, which wastes more time, or go do whatever else you were doing, which was probably trying to look for a gen, which wastes even more time. So, I think that people who say, oh, just don't tunnel and it won't be a problem, kind of miss the entire point of Decisive Strike. While yes, it's a very good anti-tunneling tool, it's also a very good aggressive tool. And I think that if you don't recognize that, you either never play killer, or you just don't think outside the box. But the biggest problem with the Decisive Strike change is that it is a nerf to M1 killers and killers without chase potential, and it is unaffected by killers with chase potential. Huntress does not care about your 5-second stun. Deathslinger might care. Trickster does not care. Plague does not care. Artist does not care. Nurse Blight Spirit does not care. None of them give a fuck about this 5-second stun, because all of them have the potential to re-down you anyway, or catch up to you in chase anyway. This mostly hurts killers like Wraith, Trapper, Freddy, Myers, Pig. There's a lot that goes into decision making, and what I'm trying to get at today with talking about this is the fact that global buffs and nerfs are a problem. There was this response on the forums that I'm not going to go through the trouble of finding and putting up on screen. Most of you have probably seen it, but it was a response from a developer, and they basically said, we won't do changes that individually affect each killer. And I hate saying this, I really do, but it was basically out of their mouths where they were like, it's not feasible. And that's just lazy game development. I'm going to be real with you. You guys know me. I don't like calling the devs lazy. I don't like calling them incompetent. I don't believe they are either of those things. I've said it in the past. My biggest criticism of the devs is that they play things too safe. But I don't think they're incompetent. I don't think they're lazy. I don't think they're uncreative. But that is just lazy. You have 35 killers? 33? I want to say 33. You have over 30 killers in this game. There is no realm of reality where global buffs and nerfs affect them all the same. And standardization of things, while interesting and probably a good idea, also needs to be taken a look at. I saw this tier list on Twitter one day of somebody trying to reorganize the way terror radiuses work on killers. And I don't disagree. Now, there is some normalization where if a killer is 110, they typically have a 24-meter terror radius, and if a killer is 115, they typically have a 32-meter terror radius, with the major exceptions being Chucky and Slinger, for they are both 110 and have a 32 meter radius. And then Wesker is the only killer in the game to have a 40 meter terror radius. And then the only other killer in the game that has a lower terror radius by default is Xenomorph in her crawler mode. She has a 24 meter terror radius while she's 115. And Myers, who has a 16 meter terror radius while he's 115. Now, this all seems pretty complicated, but for the most part, it's not. And the reason I bring up terror radiuses is because it's an interesting idea to think about. For example, why does Wesker have a 40 meter terror radius? I don't understand that. If it's because of his bounds, then shouldn't characters like Nurse also have a 40 meter terror radius? And Blight? And Spirit? Like, shouldn't the top 3 killers in the game have 40 meter terror radiuses as well? I know I've said in the past that I don't want behavior to essentially tier list killers in order to do balancing decisions. I don't like that idea. But with things like terror radiuses and also walking speeds, I think it's safe to say that there needs to be more wiggle room. Right now, terror radiuses move in increments of 8. 8, 16, 24, 32, and 40. This is great, but I think that there needs to be more variation depending on the strength of the killer. For example, I don't think Trapper should have a 32 meter terror radius. I think he should have a 24 meter terror radius. I don't think that Slinger should have a 32 meter radius. I think he should have a 24 meter radius. People have said that that's not a good idea because of monitor and abuse, and I get that, and we could talk about that in a different video. But the point is that those 2 killers probably need their terror radiuses changed. Freddy is another one that needs his terror radius changed. A lot of M1 killers really shouldn't be 32 meters. Pig, Myers is only 32 and exposed, and that's fine. But Pig, Freddy, Trapper, I don't even think the Wraith should have a 32 meter terror radius when uncloaked, right? I don't think that's, I don't think that should be a thing. But also speeds, right? Right now we have 2 speeds, 110 and 125, which is 4.4 and 4.6. The only exception being the nurse who walks at 3.8, and we can leave her ass alone. I'm gonna write the nurse video probably tomorrow. Like this video is being recorded on a Saturday. I'll probably start on the nurse video on the Sunday. But anyway, the point is that I think that there's a lot that needs to be done with each killer individually, and we need to stop doing global changes. Like, oh, we're just going to, like, do you guys remember when Nurse's M1, or when Nurse's blink attack counted as an M1, and they had to nerf things like Make Your Choice and Starstruck and Dragon's Grip because of Nurse? And then they changed it to where Nurse's blink attacks are M2s and then never changed those other perks back? That's a problem. If they had just made her blink attack an M2 from the get-go, we wouldn't have had to worry about that. I'm actually confused as to why Spirit's phase attack isn't an M2, but whatever. The point is that if you try to do these global changes because of 1 to 2 killers, instead of just changing those 1 to 2 killers, then you're going to have problems. If you try to buff every killer, then it's not going to be enough for the killers who really need it, and it's going to be too much for the killers who don't need it. And this also happened with the Save the Best for Last change. Now every single normal attack and special attack remove stacks. But you know what's crazy? Things like Artis's crows, not damaging you, just swarming you, remove a stack. Pinhead binding you with his chains, not hitting you, just binding you, remove a stack. That is stupid, guys. That is stupid. I would do the "is the camera on me" meme, but I'm not filming this. I'm just recording the audio. It is stupid. You should be individually looking at killers because every single killer is going to work differently inherently. And I get it. There's a lot of killers in the game, but you need to take them into account anyway when you create things. So you might as well start looking at doing individual changes and fine-tuning each killer with terror radius and speed changes, and maybe even things like miss recovery and stuff like that, because some killers are some killers don't care if they miss an attack. They'll catch up anyway. Other killers missing an attack is incredibly detrimental to them. But that's all I have for you guys today. Of course, let me know what you think down below. And as always, a very good special thank you to my channel members listed on screen now. If you want to find out how to become a channel member today and get awesome perks like seeing videos early, merch discount codes, and more, then please click that join button down below. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.